Okay, so I wanted to do a video where I compare my 997.2 to my 928. So the 928 is 1985 Euro spec, and then the 911 is a 2009 997.2 2S. So it's got 385 or so horsepower. My 928 has around 310, I think, with the Euro spec. Might be a little bit less or more than that, not sure exactly. Anyways, I guess it's odd to compare those two cars, but those are the two cars that I have, and I'll figure I'll just compare the two. I kind of feel like the 928, not a lot of people know about it, and they don't really know how good of a car that actually is. There's the owners that realize that, and you'll find a lot of owners that have multiple 928s because they're relatively inexpensive to the air-cooled 911s. But I think that if you're a Porsche person, I think that the 928 is definitely a vehicle that you should consider or at least know about. So I'm going to do my best job of kind of comparing the different aspects of the two vehicles. Right now I'm in the 911. So I did want to mention I got up to 500 subscribers on this channel. I'm pretty happy about that. I wanted to say thanks for folks who have subscribed. I've never actually asked for subscribers. If you're one of the first ones to subscribe to this channel, I just posted different shots of me driving the 928. Went to Home Depot one time and then whatever. And I was just trying to figure out different angle perspectives and sound quality and whatnot with the GoPros that I had. And so I had done a similar thing with my my motorcycle. So I have a 2022 Aprilia Touareg 660, and I started with that channel mainly because there wasn't a lot of US based channels describing that particular motorcycle, because it was a brand new model, and I kind of did an honest opinion of it once I got it, and that channel kind of took off like pretty quickly. I got up to, I don't know, 200 300 subscribers right away, and then I haven't posted anything for like the longest time, so it's kind of just been around that a mark. It's OCD Moto, so that's the channel name. Anyways, the point is that I started both channels without really asking for subscribers or anything like that. That really wasn't my goal in creating these channels. I just wanted to post videos and maybe some how-to videos, especially with the timing belt service on the 928. Anyway, so I'm not planning on making this my career, but if it generates income at some point, or money, or a little bit of money so I can buy more stuff for these vehicles, that's great. But I don't think I'm going to get there anytime soon. If you know anything about YouTube and the way that you can earn money, there's some point at 500 subscribers that you can get that, and then something like 2,000 viewing hours, and then you can start selling stuff on your site and then sell other people's stuff. It just, to me, it's ridiculous. So I don't think I'll ever sell merch ever. That's like the dumbest thing for a person to sell that stuff. Like, someone's going to want a t-shirt with your personal brand. If you're larger, I get it, like in the 500,000 or to 1 million, that's maybe somewhat okay. But as an individual YouTubers, it's like the cheesiest, cringiest thing to sell your own branded t-shirt. It's like garbage. Anyways, that's my opinion. So for the folks that did subscribe, that's kind of cool. I appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, I don't really promise anything on this channel. I can just stop, and then I don't really care. But if you yeah, I'm not going to ask for subscribers, so whatever. So I'm going to go into driving this vehicle and then talk about the different aspects of this car compared to the 928. Okay, so in terms of handling, I'm going to say overall, the 928 handles better. Obviously, with the 911, there's a rear bias in terms of the weight, like quite a bit. And in terms of just overall handling, you know, separate the tires and all this other stuff, the 928 handles better. It's a pure kind of 50-50 distribution, and yeah, it handles better. Now, in terms of you know, like, can I take a particular corner faster in the 928 versus the 911? Separating the power aspect of it, I'm not sure. It really depends on how good I get at driving each car. But just right off the bat, in terms of, like, you know, if you jump in the car and just kind of like feel how each car handles, the 928 beats it, I believe. The in terms of steering, same thing. I want to say the 928 steers, the steering weight is better because there's a heaviness to the 928 that I like. On center, it's fine, and then when you start turning into a corner or a curve, it weights way better than, I think, this 911. I want to say this 911 is a little bit more like refined in its steering, a little bit more, you know, for the general masses, and because of that, it's not as weighted. The other thing that I found kind of surprising was when you're accelerating, and let's say accelerating going into a slight curve or just accelerating in general, you know, the weight of the car shifts to the back and it kind of lifts up on the front, and there's a lightness to the steering that is a little bit disconcerting. It doesn't feel like confidence inspiring, if I can use that term. So I don't necessarily like that aspect of it. And I know there's a way to drive these cars. I haven't, you know, gone fully into that or experienced that or even am good at that. But just, again, kind of like what my feeling is that the steering, because the 928 is so weighted, it just feels better. It feels more confident. So I give the nod to the 928 in steering. In terms of clutch feel and clutch engagement, I'm going to give it to the 911. I think that it's the clutch bite is really nice. Also, just, you know, putting your foot on the clutch, not like resting it, but just putting your foot lightly on the clutch. There's like a stop to it. It just doesn't move anymore. It just kind of stops, and then you have to really engage it. And I like that because on the 928, there's like a slack, a certain amount of slack. So when you're just resting your foot on the clutch, and I know you're not supposed to, but I do every once in a while, and it just slacks in a little bit before it starts not engaging per se, or I should say engaging, but it's not like I'm, getting into gear or anything like that. It just kind of like you start feeling the spring, whatever the clutch spring is. So I don't like that aspect of it in the 928. The shifter feel is much better in the 911. So the 911 has much better shifter feel, even with this stock shifter setup, which is something I'm planning on upgrading. But it's perfectly fine. I don't think I really even have to. The reason I'm gonna upgrade it is because I want that little bit more of a mechanical feel. On the 928, what I have is Hans short shifter. If you know anything about the Hans short shifter, it's pretty good. It gives you quite a bit of adjustability, and I like slam that shifter stick all the way down, and I think that's not smart to do, in that it takes a lot of effort to get into gear. In addition to the fact that I think that I probably need to like maintenance the gearing, the transmission gearing to a certain degree. It's an old car. The bushings on the 928, in terms of the shifter linkages, they're good. They're actually pretty solid, but it's just getting it into gear is takes a little bit more effort. And I think if I had a taller, shifter knob or shifter stick, whatever you want to call it, I would have more leverage to push into the different gears, and I think it would feel better. And it's really, really tight, and not tight in a kind of good way. It's just tight in a kind of like I'm at the extremes of the Hans short shifter and then what it's sitting in. So I'm going to give the nod to the 911 in terms of shifter feel. Brakes, right now, they both feel basically the same. I don't really have a complaint or they're great or anything like that. They stop. So both brakes have new rotors, new pads on both vehicles, so they feel perfectly fine. Like on the extremes, I haven't taken both cars on the extremes of braking. Like I haven't taken either car to a track where I have to really stop within a short distance, and whether the brake pads and the brake rotor got really hot or anything like that. So I don't know if there's any fade in either one of them. I would imagine the 911 has better brakes in general, but I haven't necessarily experienced that because I haven't pushed it to that level. Okay, so in terms of like interior ergonomics, they're honestly, I'm going to give the nod to the 928. For its time, it was much, more modern, advanced, or whatever you would want to call it for its time, and it's held its man, I don't know what I'm saying, but it's held its like look extremely well, and it's got quirkiness, which I appreciate. This era of 911, it has hardly any quirkiness, and the cool things about 911s, especially the air-cooled 911s, they have so many little quirks that makes the vehicle extremely appealing, fun. On an air-cooled 911, like the climate controls are just interesting, and they're fun, and they're very, very functional. There's a thing where you can you lift on these little red levers, and it'll put heat from outside at your legs, but then you can have cool air coming up in the front defrogger area or defroster area, and that's such a cool feature. And I wish they maintained that here in this generation, but you can't have that feature. Now the 928 doesn't have that feature, but it has just a quirkiness to it that's fun, and the interior, I'll take shots of that. It looks fine. It looks perfectly acceptable, especially for a classic vehicle. So I will give the nod in terms of interior to the 928. This interior for the 911 is fine, but that's kind of like its fault. It's too just normal, and it looks fine, and it's like, oh, like a woman would be like, oh, this is a nice interior, where 928, she might be like, oh, okay, it's kind of old looking, but you're like, but look at all these cool little quirky things, and they wouldn't understand, but nonetheless, it would be cool for you. In terms of audio system, this one has the Bose audio upgrade. The 928 has aftermarket stuff, which sounds, I think, better. So in terms of interior sound noise from the audio system, the way I have it set up in the 928, it's better than this setup. I had to do quite a bit of adjustments in the tuning department to make it sound good to me in the driver's seat. Okay, so let's go to sound. The sound of the engine, the sound of the exhaust, 100% the 928. Now, what I have in the 928 isn't necessarily stock, but I think even if it was stock, it would sound 1,000 times better than this 911. This 911 sounds like, honestly, a Honda Civic compared to the 928. The 928 is a V8, if you didn't know that. It sounds incredibly awesome. There's like a rumbling to it. I also have a cat delete along with an X pipe, and it still has its muffler. It has two mufflers. Anyways, it still has its main muffler, but it just sounds really, really good. And it's a combination of the sound and the rawness of the engine that makes driving that car, the whole experience, a little bit better. So in terms of engine sound, exhaust note, 100% the 928. Let me go to acceleration feel or pedal feel for the accelerator. The responsiveness is better in the 911, so obviously because it's more mono, but the responsiveness is better in the 911. But in terms of joy and driving the car, like the experience of driving a car, it's better in the 928 because there's this like vibration that comes through in a good way. There's this vibration rumbling that comes through the accelerator that you're pressing and then everything's vibrating, everything's, you get that auditory like, noise, the rumbling. So everything kind of like happens when you're pressing the gas pedal. Whereas this, it's like it just starts spinning up, and then it's not until you get to, above, I don't know, 4,000 RPM, and you start hammering on it, and then you can kind of feel something, but even then it's just the noise, maybe. It's not like this vibration that comes through, through the accelerator and then through your seat, and then you can hear it. None of that. So, responsiveness of the throttle, 911, but in terms of like acceleration feel, the 928 for sure. Okay, so exterior looks, let's say. So they're both equal. Honestly, I think that the 928 looks really, really good, especially now because it's so odd looking. I think that's quite a bit of an appeal. And the fact that it has the pop-up headlights, that's something that you don't see at all. And that's something that's super, super appealing. Now, I rarely pop it up, even when I, can, let's say, like in this type of weather. For whatever reason, I don't like popping it up because I just don't want it exposed. And I don't want people looking at the car, honestly. So I leave it down and I just put these halogen fog lights. I should say there's some unique things about the 928 that's specific to the Euro version that I like, that, like a standard 928 wouldn't necessarily have. So when I do this comparison, I'm definitely comparing my 928, which is kind of unique, and this 911, which isn't that unique per se. Because you can have a 928 and most of them are in in automatic form, and lesser power, different body, and so all those things I think will contribute to whether that car is as enjoyable as I'm describing it or not. In terms of maintenance or upkeep, it's much easier in the 911 just because it's more modern. It has everything to do with age. But I will say, as much as the 928 has its electrical gremlins and things popping up here and there, I'm not worried about that car. I mean, I just know that things will go wrong or break or stop working, but I'm not worried about the engine, bore scoring or anything like that. I am, initially I was worried about the timing belt because it is an interference motor, but you just maintain that. It's a relatively easy service, especially after you've done it once. But I'm not like worried about it when I drive the car. The 911 I'm totally worried about, and I had an earlier video about that where, you know, like the first X amount of minutes of this video, I'm like really concerned about how much I rev the car because it hasn't warmed up yet. You know, I'm always concerned about, you know, this bore scoring issue, and I know it's probably like a very low chance that this car will have bore scoring to the point where I'll have to do something about it, but it's still there in the back of my mind. The 928 is just, you know, it's just maintenance, and I have much more, you know, like, or I should say I have less anxiety driving that car than I do this car for sure. But I'm getting over that with this car. I'm definitely getting over that where I can kind of enjoy this car and not worry about it so much when I'm actually taking it out. And I think that, you know, I'll maybe do another video where I kind of compare the two cars again after I've done some of the mods that I want to do with this car. And I think it might be a different thing because, or different results because, you know, with all the upgrades that I'm talking about, I think it's going to make this car, you know, very similar, if not better than the 928. It's unfortunate that Porsche stopped the 928 because I think that if they continued on, it would be a pretty interesting car in modern day. So that's one thing I wish they would have kept on doing. Driving position, I'm going to give it to the 911. I think the driving position and driving feel is just better here than the 928. The 928 is okay, but it's like the seats are a little bit narrow. Just everything isn't like laid out perfectly as it is in the 911 here. It's pretty dialed in. Like I feel very, very comfortable. Whatever. It fits like a glove without a whole lot of compromises. Okay, so let me just summarize with the overall driving experience. Separating kind of like acceleration and the modernness versus the classic or antiquity of the 928. If you kind of separate those two or remove those aspects and you just talk about like driving experience and driving fun, it's the 928. You know, like people will talk about driving the 911 like this era, and they make these statements like, oh, it just always brings a smile to my face, you know, and all this other stuff. Like, where are you coming from? Are you coming from like a Honda Civic or a Lexus? Or no, I shouldn't say Lexus. Honda Civic? Are you coming from that? Or not even a Honda Civic. Are you coming from a Corolla? And you get in a 911 and you're like, oh, this is bringing me so much joy, it puts a smile on my face? Or are you coming from, you know, like an older Porsche? If you're coming from an older Porsche, you're going to be frowning, like I think. So, like, as much as I don't think I've ever had like smile from this experience of driving this car yet. I may after all my upgrades, but it's not like I sit there and go like, oh, this is bringing a smile to my face, or this is pure joy. Not at all. And it could be just me, but I've done that in the 928 where there have been days where I've driven that car and it has put a smile on my face. Like, I don't actually smile, but inside I'm smiling because it is that kind of pure joy of a driving experience. And like I said, that experience is all encompassing. It's the acceleration, it's the sound, the visceral like sensation. There's a certain amount of fear that adds to all that. I think in this car, to get to that level of like feeling a certain level of fear in a good way, you'd really have to push it, or you're taking a corner and you're not sure where the limits are. In the 928, there's acceleration and then there's a certain amount of fear that you're experiencing because you're kind of like, can this car do this from 1985? Can it really do this? And it can. It's amazing that it can do that. It's like a really fun car. The other thing about the 928, not so much compared to the 911, but the other thing about the 928 is you don't have to qualify it to anybody or yourself. You don't have to say, oh, this is a 1985 car. Back in 1985, cars were not that great, and this car stood above all those cars, and you have to put yourself back in 1985 and try to imagine what it was like to drive those types of cars, and then jump in this car and then go, oh yeah, it's super, modern, or it was great back in 1985. You don't have to do that. You drive the 928 hard, and it's going to respond. It accelerates, it pulls, it handles, as well as a vehicle in today's day, if not better, because there's no driving aids. The only thing that car has is ABS, and then power assisted hydraulic rack. So you don't have to do any kind of acrobats in your mind to say like, oh, this was great back in the 80s. You don't have to do that. It's just great in 2024. So that's a huge, I think, plus for a classic type of vehicle where you don't have to put yourself. I mean, the extreme would be like a Model T. If you're driving that car, you'd be like, oh wow, this is great coming from horses. You don't have to do that. You have to be like, you can just jump in that car, and it is fun. And anyone, I think anybody would agree. You don't have to like go, oh yeah, this was great back then. No, it's pretty cool. And so like I bought that car because I originally was looking for an air-cooled 911. I don't know what the internal model number is. It was 1987 through 89 type of air-cooled 911, so they're just too expensive. So I kind of compromised and went with the 928 after I did some research on it. I had the same I just totally ran the red light. I had the same kind of myths about that car, water cooled, this, that, and the other. But once I started looking at it and investigating it, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And then when I got it, that's when I was like, this is really cool. And then when you look at when you look online on the forums and you compare, like on Rentless, if you compare the amount of traffic or the amount of, information on a 928 compared to any other model in the Porsche range on Rentless, if you look at the numbers, 928s like by far have more members, more communication, just more information. And I think that's something that says something about the 928s. There's a passion around that. And I can only imagine it's going to just, it's like just a matter of time before the masses realize that. Because it is a really cool car. And there's so much, so many myths that are not correct about that car that just kind of people don't realize. But I think when they start doing that, those cars are going to be sought after and kind of revered, very similar to what the air-cooled 911s are. Air-cooled 911s, I had one. I had an 87 and an 88, and compared to the 928, it's like not even a comparison. The 928 is like way, way better. So, anyways, I'll end with that. Hopefully you enjoy this. Once again, thanks for the 500 subscribers that that have subscribed. I do appreciate it. All right, that's it.